Now, when I think summer blockbusters, I grew up thinking Pierce Brosnan as James Bond. Now, I know these are traditionally Thanksgiving movies, at least, Bond often is, but I do want to say that Pierce Brosnan as James Bond was my Bond for a very long time, even though now I'm firmly in the Craig camp. I think my favorite Bond movie, at least the one I've seen the most and played the most and enjoyed the most, was Goldeneye. So we're going to tie the highs and lows together of the beautiful Pierce Brosnan as we tie together Goldeneye with, later this week, The Lawnmower Man. Now, for those of you who don't remember the old Myopia show, we had done a month of Pierce Brosnan Bond, and then we came back for mission briefing, where we did all the Bonds in order. This is the mission briefing release. So stay tuned for, hopefully, more Pierce movies. This season, I have a couple up my sleeve. But in the meantime, I want to thank you for listening and enjoy. Welcome to Mission Briefing. This week we have left behind Timothy Dalton and we've started with Pierce Brosnan, I guess the only actor we've done so far who already has Donkey Kong mode unlocked. He has a huge freaking head. And I didn't realize this until halfway through the movie, but there are shots where it's his shoulders and he's floating around like a toddler's head, just like giant chin and hair. I guess fresh off his success as Mr. Doubtfire. Mrs. Doubtfire, which was I think 93. Anyway,
wait, there was a remake of...
No, he's in Mrs. Doubtfire.
As who?
The boyfriend.
The very dashing boyfriend.
I don't remember that. I just remember, Robin Williams is...
Yeah. Yeah, no, he drives the Mercedes.
Forget Robin Williams.
Yeah.
Really? Oh, okay. I'll take you guys' word for it. I mean, I think I haven't watched it that much.
He was the drive-by fruiting.
This was a drive-by fruiting.
Okay.
That's your one freebie.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I mean, I didn't grow up watching Remington Steele, which, because this guy, it's like when you occasionally, have a politician who clearly wanted to be a politician their whole life. This is someone who clearly wanted to be James Bond his whole life. His haircut, his mannerisms. He was even in a spy TV show for a while.
Has anyone seen Remington Steele?
I haven't seen
a few episodes.
I haven't seen one.
It's like Mission Impossible.
Okay.
I will say, the other movies he makes in this era, like The Matador and the Thomas Crown Affair, are much better than some of the later Bond movies he does.
Agreed.
Because, the Thomas Crown Affair is just an art heist.
Well, no, it's fantastic because it's so much better than the original.
Well, yeah.
The original's awful.
The original, was that Steve McQueen?
It was, and sadly, it's one of my least favorite Steve McQueen movies. I watched it once, somebody was like, what the hell is this?
It was really weird.
Well, and it's again, Roger Moore is kind of dashing. Sean Connery's kind of rugged. Tim Dalton is very gritty. Pierce Brosnan, they don't know what to do with, and so everyone is quipping around him like it's a Roger Moore movie, but he's still Tim Dalton. He does a lot of steely glares. He does a lot of weird awkwardness. But
it makes sense in that he's that character when you think that the script was originally made for Timothy Dalton. Because this is very much like the last one, where everyone else in the movie was making the quips that James Bond normally makes.
Right.
But Bond barely said a word.
Makes you question whether or not Timothy Dalton had the worst timing of all the Bonds. Because later Pierce Brosnan, he has some lines. They're bad, but there's some better lines than this.
Well, and... There's also another weird carryover, which we haven't talked about. We'll get through all of this. But
we gotta get to the plot.
Or introduce ourselves.
Yeah, we don't need to introduce anything. I'm good. No, but I was thinking about Joe Don Baker, which we need to get back to. But we can go around our table and introduce ourselves. This is not very organized. We're 6.5 minutes in already. But it'll happen. So I'm Nick Hoffman. I'm the host, Myopia Defend Your Childhood, Mission Briefing, and the head of Do Letter Podcasting. And on our panel tonight is...
It's Thomas Herman, host of the Geekly Oddcast and of the Brothers Herman. I actually finally have a podcast up and going at the time of this recording, so there we go.
Congratulations.
Your joke is finally over.
We're recording this in advance. It might have folded by then. We don't...
Doubtful. I have another 16 weeks worth of episodes to go.
Fair enough. All right, Steve.
Yeah, Steve-O's here from my mother's womb and nothing else of any notoriety.
And I'm John, also from Steve's mother's womb.
Oh dear.
Can we get some triplets up in here? Can I also
Hey!
Yeah, please.
Everyone around the
The
table
more the
is
merrier.
a male in chronological height and brown-haired. So
There you go.
it's...
I'm Matt, by the way. I'm also not really... I don't do anything. So.
occasional guest host.
That was one time.
Okay,
It was a one-time thing.
Very
It's complicated.
occasional.
panelist. You are a panelist. How about
Panelists, there we go.
Serial panelist.
that? Wow. So, I mean, we've been kind of talking around this one. This one's a little bit different, as you guys can tell, because this is the one that, I mean, inspired Matt and I to do a whole series and then ultimately the whole spin-off.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, did we just have like a cold open and then an introduction? Is that-
Yeah. I mean, we did.
Can we get a song? Anyone want to do a quick
Goldeneye, something, something.
It's the new format.
Pierce Brosnan.
But I mean, yeah, so we kind of danced around this a little bit, but this is the one we wanted to do the most. This is the movie we'd all seen the most. This is probably the first Bond movie that most of us remember seeing, like in theaters or whatever, right as it came out, at least. I think I rented
That's
it.
why this is the last Bond podcast we'll ever do. Good night, everybody.
Yeah, that's all you needed to say.
Other than Goldfinger, I think this is the most iconic Bond film. I mean, I don't know if anyone would... I don't know which other ones...
Certainly
would
of the
get
newer
attention,
ones.
but-
Yeah.
I mean, I would say probably Skyfall did better than it, ultimately. I don't know how good of it is as a total movie, but this is...
This one was the best release since Moonraker for cinema releases.
I guess going back and watching them,
Yeah,
in my mind, those are the two that stick out.
Yeah,
I don't know.
No, I'm not going to argue. I think there's something to be said about how this movie feels, and it feels very different, right? Because it's a movie that we saw a lot of, and it's also a movie, all of them have problems being in their own time period.
I'm kind of curious because it almost seems like this is almost very similar to how people of the generation after us who saw Casino Royale. There was a pretty long gap between the end of Die Another Day and Casino Royale, and for us, there had been a lag between License to Kill and, none of us saw like License to Kill in theaters, or I'm assuming that,
No.
and then we go to Goldeneye and it's out in theaters. I mean, I saw it on VHS, but it's kind of that gap, and then this rebirth of Bond, and then we got the same thing after Die Another Day, this kind of reboot. Just kind of an interesting.
Well, I mean, I get the feeling looking at some of these, that there was much more continuity. There's like much more consistency, and the idea that there'd be Bond movies that come out every 2 to 3 years, and then there was a long gap here, which led to all sorts of legal troubles. And we mentioned before that there was almost a Sony competitive series because Clement McClory had the license back, and so they wanted to make sure this one was so big and so over the top that they would never be able to compete. And then the McClory thing all folded and ended up another 30 years of legal disputes. So whatever. But it's kind of interesting to watch this because, again, this is one I've watched a lot. We've played the game and we promised we wouldn't talk too much about the game, and I don't think we will, but we will talk about the game. So we'll end talking about how we think Pierce Brosnan did overall as a new Bond. But you already got some audio. I mean, we've been talking for 11 minutes that you've been listening to, and I'm sorry, but it happens. But we should kind of talk a little bit about this cold open a little more. So we see a man wearing the most toupee wig, like it's flopping around as it luxuriously runs on the top of the biggest dam we've ever seen.
It's a big dam.
What a dam.
Which dam was this, by the way? What actual dam was
I didn't even look up the dam.
Damn.
But
It was a dam.
It was a dam, and he runs off and he attaches himself to a bungee and he bungees.
Surprise.
I know. And at the time, I believe it was the world record for the farthest free
In a movie.
in a movie.
722 feet.
I thought it was actually a world record at the time. Like they actually.
In a movie,
But it's still, and I think it was still in a movie. I think it was It's the Contra Dam in Switzerland.
Very cool.
But the whole idea is that this is X years in the past, with the height of the Soviet Union still. And the idea here, which might even be a nod to the fact that 7 years before he was almost Bond, right? That they're going to try to blow up this weapons factory. It's a chemical weapon plant at the base of this. Well, it's at the base of the dam at the top of a mountain, so simultaneously...
Strange geography.
Strange geography. Bond comes through a vent into a turlet, punches a man in the face who ends up on the floor of a turlet, and then runs into 006, Alec Trevelyan, where we end up with our plot starting.
Yeah.
Mines are set. General Ormov busts through the door after half the other half is fate.
Sean Bean dies.
Sean Bean dies. Ends up...
Ish.
And we end up with the second craziest stunt, which involves a rolling case of gas tanks, I guess.
Oh, it's Mr. Bean completely.
Yeah, it was a Mr. Bean scene. There's also, considering that Mr. Bean was in 2 movies ago as the liaison.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes, he was.
That's right.
Rowan Atkinson?
Rowan Atkinson.
Yeah.
And we end up with the Mr. Bean car that Joe Don Baker drives. So it's
true.
We just can't leave Mr. Bean behind.
We cannot leave Bean behind. Leave no Bean behind. But yeah, then we get this crazy second stunt where he steals a motorcycle, drives off a cliff, gets in the plane that's falling off the cliff.
Now, is this the first cold open with 2 crazy stunts?
I mean,
there have been some that have included multiple stunts, but like bungee jumping off a dam, chasing a plane off of a cliff with a motorcycle.
I imagine they wanted to knock it out of the park as far as entertainment goes.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes off to go, it's the greatest way of showing, hey, this is Bond.
Mm-hmm.
He's nuts.
Well, but I want to say that I agree with Matt, though. This sets kind of a bad precedent, right? Because, like, when they did the one time for On Her Majesty's Secret Service, right? He's in the casino having a cocktail, doing the James Bond thing where, playing cards. Now everything's an explosion. Like, Inspector, isn't that with like money pennies on the top of it, like a train with a bazooka and people are flying through the air? You're just like, yeah, all right.
Well, that's the Pierce Brosnan era in general, isn't it? That each movie tried to outdo the one before in terms of set piece, explosions, kill rates, and everything.
Yeah, no, and
space lasers. Oh wait,
yeah.
I guess that kind of shows up in a
well, it comes back again, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It already happened once. So, that gets us to our musical number, which is Goldeneye.
Surprise!
This one was crap.
I'm okay with it.
It's Tina Turner.
Yeah,
right?
Tina Turner.
Written by Bono and The Edge, and then they thought, hey, we should do a Spider-Man musical, and that was a shame.
Not a fan.
No.
That was a mistake.
This is 95 too, because U2 super relevant. In 1995, but then from there, I guess the visuals were okay. It was
as far as a music video, it did very well at the transition. That you had the cold open, which was at the height of the Cold War, and you have the movie, which is the first Bond after the Cold War.
This is a good kind
and
of showing.
The music video was all about tearing down the old Soviet
I just don't like the song.
things.
Nothing against the song. I wouldn't listen to it.
No.
It's just very forgettable. I didn't know any of the words aside from Goldeneye.
Well, I remember thinking that it was weird because it seems to think that Goldeneye is a person, and Goldeneye is not a person.
Well, it's also a lot of these songs, like, they clearly watched the first 5 minutes of the movie and they're just like, I got this.
I can picture Bono just doing that, like, oh no, guys.
Got
The
it.
I got
inspiration
it.
is set in. Let's get to work.
Well, that was the thing about what's his name? The guy who wrote all the Shirley Bassey songs. Like, he just watched, like, that's why, like, the for like the last movie was all about the skiing stuff. When there's only like 6 minutes of skiing in the whole movie, they're not even in the Alps that long.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, they don't end up doing a Lawrence of Arabia thing, but the whole second act of the movie is Lawrence of Arabia.
It's like they don't give the composers any sort of overview of the script.
They don't want to give them spoilers.
They're writing the theme song. I think they're allowed to have a little bit of spoiler.
Yeah.
They just get a title and a 30-second clip of the movie.
It's like when The Simpsons, they like actually did 3 endings to figure out who shot Mr. Burns, and you're just like, you could have just skipped it, man. Just make it out. I don't know. But that brings us to John Copsey trying to explain the plot.
This one's fairly simple.
Okay.
I'm sure we'll get into the nitty-gritty of it. But so, after the cold open, we're reintroduced to Mother Russia after the Cold War is over. It's now the Republic of Russia, not the Soviet Union. But Bond is in Monaco? Monte Carlo?
Monaco?
One of those countries?
Monte Carlo likes to go to.
Yeah. Well, one of those countries that exist for gambling on the Riviera.
Sure.
And he's racing. He ends up racing against Xenia Onatopp in some very nice cars. It's a DB5 versus a Ferrari
355.
355.
F355, yeah.
So nice cars, going all windy down the hills,
They crashed.
running over cyclists. In the meantime,
They actually didn't hit the cyclist.
they didn't hit the cyclist.
Bond
It was
is
comic relief. Yeah.
What is going on with Bond and this woman? She's like a psychologist.
She's evaluating him
She's doing a
because
field evaluation,
because
yeah.
M is now Judi Dench. She's new. She's apparently sent this woman to evaluate Bond, I guess, to figure out if he's still worth it. And judging by the bill that usually follows Bond, I'd say that's a valid argument.
He does destroy St. Petersburg in this movie. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, he destroys his
They had it coming.
amount of stuff.
They really did.
some very sad and scared looking engineers in this movie too, just like exploding computer engineers. Especially at the end, I was sitting next to Steve and we're just giggling because people are just jumping around exploding computers. Now to be fair, I mean now
Monitors are packed full of a lot of explosives. People don't realize this.
Screams though, you know, like
well, we are in the era now where apparently Samsung Galaxies just explode, and
We've come full
and
circle.
Samsung dryers
Yeah.
are exploding now too. So I guess
This was the prototype that came out of Q that just like right.
So not to go
they,
way off
They
base,
switched the blueprints out.
but there are only been 85% of the Samsung Galaxy Note 7s that have been returned. So still 15% that need to be recalled that will still explode.
I was just on an airplane and they literally make that announcement.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Samsung Galaxy Notes 7 notes are not allowed on this airline.
to be fair, there should be a commercial that comes out parody that basically takes the Monkey Island games and just goes Samsung Galaxy Note. I'm not putting that in my pants.
Yeah. It's just. So, although we should mention, there aren't real, like, there's some gadgets here, but it's not crazy gadgets. You have the watch laser, which shows up at the beginning and the end.
The watch laser's cool. The
Yep.
pen is like the only other gadget that they actually explain
belt.
and is
Yeah.
used.
The belt.
Yeah, they used the belt.
The belt.
The
belt and
the grappling hook.
It
Yeah.
just
Oh,
he
the
swings
bell.
across the archive.
Yeah.
Well, actually, the one I kind of
Batman for a
like,
second, right?
the one I kind of liked was very Batman-y as well, which was when he was bungee jumping down, of course, the cord would spring back up, so he had a little gun with a hook
Yeah.
to pull himself down further, which is, that's useful. That's
I kind of
neat.
liked how back in Monte Carlo he was taking pictures of Xenia with his binocular,
That was just
monocular. And
Yeah.
like he took pictures of it, and then he went back to the car, and he
Oh,
was able to
yeah.
print out the pictures, and he had a full like, I don't know, Interpol readout on who it was.
Yeah, it ran her numbers,
Yeah.
ran her plates.
Yeah.
So the thing with the gadgets for me is that when Bond uses a gadget before he meets Q, it feels like old hat, and then like you get Q to introduce these new gadgets, and you get this whole new slew of cool gadgets they get to use. But he doesn't really. For me, it was like, okay, he introduced like a pen, cool, and he shot a rocket out of his foot and did nothing. So that was, I mean, yeah, there were gadgets, but for me, it felt like Q's. It was like it was the humor. But there wasn't really the presence of the gadgets that you
Yeah.
get going forward after that. So
Well, I know that because I looked up the IMDb trivia facts or whatever about this. The reason that nothing cool comes out of the car, which was a BMW, and apparently that deal with the BMW came so late in the production process, they didn't have time to really work it into the plot and get a car that could work.
Could they have picked an uglier color?
An ugly
No.
car in general, you know.
No.
Like this car, they were told you cannot mess with it because it's the prototype. This thing hasn't gone into production yet.
They should have scrapped it.
They
right
should have.
there.
Yeah.
they should
Man, there should have been a scene where there was a smoldering crater and Jack Wade, because Jack Wade drives away at the end with it. There's just this crater.
At least a
Like,
sound effect off camera, you know, just screech,
What's
crash.
funny about that is, like, you know, they can't touch the BMW. They did $80,000 worth of damage to the Ferrari for the chase scene because they had to fix it overnight because it wasn't there. It was-
Well, and then, like, the thing, too, about it is that they don't even say, like, well, it has this, this, and this. They're just like, it has the usual things,
Wait, they
007.
did. It has 5 forward gears. That was the major selling point.
It's got a
It's like,
5-speed transmission, Bond.
And
All right.
rockets behind the headlights.
Jesus.
Yeah.
And all the usual additions.
So passenger seat, ejection seat.
Look at this leather trim.
You know what? They did make a point to say don't press any of the buttons.
Oh, yes, they did.
Yeah.
We don't know what the buttons do.
We haven't briefed
Yeah,
yet.
that would have been good because they
Air
planned on.
conditioning, radio.
None of
I wanted to go bombing
adjustable
around.
seats.
Yeah.
None of the buttons.
Oh, that's just good. Again, like he's like trying to adjust the radio and ends up flamethrower.
I did love when Bond does meet Jack Wade, and he starts with in London April's a spring month, and Jack Wade's like screw that.
You Brits and your code words.
You stiff ass Brits and your code words. Like, all right, fine. In London April's a spring month, and whereas in St. Petersburg we're freezing our butts off. Close enough? No.
Oh, that's great. Then he has to check his tattoo, which says Muffy.
Because apparently Jack Wade is a big gardening fan.
Mm-hmm.
Like they apparently cut a whole bunch of his lines out.
Is that?
But it's like his thing is because he asked James Bond, "Hey, are you a gardener?" And then when he gets the car in Cuba, he says something along the lines of,
Tobacco. He
"Yeah, oh,
recognizes
these
the
are
trees.
tobacco plants."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
there was actually more to that.
There
'cause
was more to that.
The gardening joke made no sense to me.
I know because they cut everything out, but he was a huge gardener
And a true American.
and a true American
That's right.
He's a weird
living in
character,
St.
man.
Petersburg
They
with
give him enough.
with the actor who was a bad guy.
Movie more than
Yeah.
this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, does he have any U.S. markings? Sorry, next movie. Go continue.
But no, but it's also interesting because I wonder if Jodan Baker didn't have a deal to be in this movie in advance because like he was in the last Bond movie, right? Because he was a weapons dealer, but he was a bad guy. He was the one selling weapons to the Russians.
No, that was Living Daylights. So it was
Oh,
two
two movies
ago.
ago.
Yeah.
So it's weird. To
But
have
still,
an
that's
actor
awfully
come back.
recent to have the actor come back.
Yeah, and it's a major role, like
Yeah.
as opposed to just being like a background character. Like we've had Felix Sliders come back before, even with other Felixes in between.
He was a good addition to the movie, but
Oh yeah.
I mean,
I don't know. It's weird to have someone call him Jimmy.
comic
Jimmy
relief.
Bond. Yo, Jimbo.
Yeah, we get a couple of Jimbos too.
Yo, Jimbo.
But we didn't even let you get through the plot.
No.
Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah.
There's actually we got to know.
There's this whole Goldeneye thing too, but
Yeah.
that's fine.
All right, so Xenion steals a secret, not so secret, EU/French helicopter, which is immune to electromagnetic pulse (EMP). They explain this overly. This movie is brought to you by EMP. Meanwhile, after they take the helicopter, we're introduced to Natalia Semyonova, who is the girl in this movie. She's in a secret Russian base in Severnaya that is tracking or is in control of this missile system thing in space called the Goldeneye, whose secret weapon thing is to detonate an EMP in low Earth orbit, which will knock out all the electronics in a 30
They said
mile
30
radius?
mile.
30 mile radius?
That's
A good
big
chunk
area,
of yeah. So a good chunk of space.
That's any major city in the surrounding area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So while she's there, our friend Oromov from the Cold Open comes in with Natalia in the helicopter,
He
or
has
not
an
Onatop.
They added gray
Yeah.
to his hair
Yeah.
slightly.
So he and Onatop come in the helicopter, steal the Goldeneye, set it off on Severnaya, supposedly to cover their tracks.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, the alarm went off, so the Russians were alerted. So were the British. So Bond and M, they were watching when it went off. And they see, oh, there's one person leaving. That must be Natalia.
Yeah.
And then they go to St. Petersburg for some reason. Just cuz, I guess.
On a hunch.
Why did
Oh,
they
it was
pick
because,
Petersburg?
on the top-
I did have that moment. I'm like,
Yeah.
wait.
Because I didn't keep notes. This
Yeah.
one movie. Yeah. I'm like, I know the plot. No, because Onatop, she's known to be part of the Yanis crime
Yanis
syndicate.
group, yeah.
The Yanis group. And that's her known affiliation.
Right.
So they look into Yanis group because the helicopter showed up at Severnaya.
With the boat had the what I can't remember what it said.
Manticore.
Manticore.
which is
Yeah.
a known Yanis front.
Exactly. So Yanis is somehow implicated in this, but their headquarters is supposed to be St. Petersburg.
Yes.
So everyone goes to St. Petersburg, Bond to find Yanis, Natalia because Boris is apparently there, her friend from Severnaya, who also survived. Boris is also the reason, I guess, that Severnaya blew up.
Yeah. He's their in.
He's the inside guy, yeah.
Can I be the person to say that it's very sad that her name was Natalia and not Natasha? Like, I just feel like you were missing out on a really fun.
Moose and squirrel. Oh, good.
I
Okay,
thought Oromov was a pretty good, like, you know,
Yeah, no, exactly.
there were no sexy Bond names.
on the top.
Xenia
On a top. Oh, on a top.
Yeah.
That's right.
I don't know how sexy you need it to be.
That's the last one for a while. Like,
Sexy
for a
enough.
while, actually.
Yeah, that's good. That one works. That's-
Yeah, and they make a couple of jokes about that.
They do.
Mostly Moneypenny, though.
Moneypenny keep on top of things. Samantha Bond is good. This is a
Yeah.
new Moneypenny as well, and a new M,
Mhm. And a new Bond.
and a new
It's
Bond.
the first time they switched up those three all at once.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Q is
Q's still
Q.
the same. Yeah.
That scene is stupid. I'm sorry. Okay,
The Q scene?
the Q scene. The Q
It's
scene
so
is
goofy.
literally Naked Gun. Like things are happening in the background. Like at one point, for whatever reason, they make a phone booth with an airbag in it, and it like presses the guy who's testing it up against the glass, and they
And they're
can't get him out,
cranking
so they're
off.
literally wheeling him away. Still,
Wheel 'em out.
it's literally Naked Gun.
It's very Roger
How
Moore,
do you
isn't
get the
it?
job to be the test subject at the Q laboratory?
You fail?
I like the idea. I like to think that they didn't intend it. Like he picked up the wrong phone. Like he just wandered into the phone booth
Because
that
there's a
also-
phone booth in the middle of the lab.
But did you notice Q did it too? Because he wheels up in a wheelchair with this giant cast on his leg, and Bond goes skiing, and he goes hunting, and then he fires a missile out of the foot, but he misses the mannequin he's aiming for. It hits someone's desk. And you just see an explosion in a white lab coat.
It just lets you know that if you work in Q Laboratories, you have no life insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I'll add this to the Myopia feed, to the group, join the group. But Thomas sent me on a clip from Muppets Tonight where Pierce Brosnan was the host of Muppets Tonight, and they do a Bunsen Honeydew and Beaker scene, and that's what this literally was. Like people explode for no reason. There's blasting through walls. It's very silly.
I imagine the people working here are very Dr. Krieger clones.
Yes.
You know, they've got a vat somewhere in the back, and every time one dies, they just clone another one.
Well, and again, because like
Because Q is definitely Krieger.
Q is definitely Krieger. Yeah.
I don't know about the like historical ties that Q. Oh, never mind. I don't need to get into Archer.
Are you saying Q is a secret Nazi?
I don't think so.
I mean,
He hides it well.
he's old enough that he literally could have fought the Nazis by
Yeah.
this point. Like
Yeah.
Q at this point is starting to look a little rough.
He was spry for being probably 80 something.
Yeah. Well, this is his third to last. No,
Because he's in Tomorrow Never Dies. And
He's in The World Is Not
World's Not Enough, and that was it.
Yeah, 'cause The
then
World
we're
Is Not Enough, they
introduced
introduce
John
R.
Cleese,
Yeah.
And we get R. Well, R was just a joke name, and then they kept it.
which
Yeah.
is stupid
Because it was John Cleese. I mean, it was going to be a joke.
Yeah.
because Q is quartermaster, R is just retarded.
Mhm.
But
Quartermaster.
quartermaster, and that, I mean, I'm glad that for the Daniel Craig ones they recast it with a younger guy because that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
You didn't like him?
Yeah.
He's fine.
He's fine.
He does the role.
He looks like
He's
Breen.
not. He does. He does look like Breen. Yeah. He just doesn't have the feel to him that Q had.
Well, he's a younger Q.
Desmond Llewelyn.
He hasn't. He's not sick of their shit yet. Like he's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's also in the field much more. And it was always so great to see Desmond Llewelyn wearing like a Panama hat and looking very awkward and things. No, we're going to dinner.
I'm
It's just
undercover. Like him in India. You remember that in Octopussy?
Yeah.
He stood out. Oh man, he was so white.
He's there to conquer, man. He was practically wearing a pith helmet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Him and his-
I guess in India that might actually blend in. I don't know.
the 1970s. We own you people, don't we? Not since,
Still?
Not in 30 years, man. But the Queen. It's fine. Whatever. Yeah. So.
So yeah, Goldeneye's a thing. Bond goes after it. We're introduced to Valentin Zukovsky,
Yep.
the Russian mobster, who apparently has a history with Bond, and also a connection with Yanis crime
What was
syndicate.
the name of the dude?
Valentin Zukovsky. I just said it.
No.
The actor.
No.
Robbie Coltrane,
The head of Giannis, the secretive.
Alec Trevelyan,
No, the name that he's called on the streets.
Yanis. I don't know
Didn't
where
he
you
have a
get.
different name.
I
No,
thought
No.
he was
That was
Yanis.
it.
He was a
He
Cossack.
named his crime syndicate after himself.
Sure.
Sure.
Who does that?
A
Giannis?
big crime
Octopussy?
syndicate leader.
Spectre.
He's too big to give a shit.
Russian
Two-Face.
something or other.
No, it was a two-faced god. That was kind of the whole, and then the fact that
He burned his face.
he burned his face. Yeah.
Okay. I thought there was another name going on there. I'm really just
No.
going.
Did you watch this
nowhere.
movie?
We were all there, man. Well, I mean, and again, like this one's kind of weird because we could talk about the plot backwards and forwards. Like, we should talk about little things after Famke Janssen, who is Xenia, and old Russian man Oromov blow up. Oh, first kill everyone, take Boris away, and then blow up this Servennaya station. We end up with Natalia just sitting there. And there's this weird 15-minute sequence where she's just like covering up corpses, crying in corners, and like there's almost no background music. Like it's a very weird scene in a Bond movie. And that's something I noticed. There's a couple of these. There's also one on the beach in Cuba.
Yeah. That one was brief though. That wasn't too good.
That wasn't as long.
But it was still, it felt out of place.
Well, they had to establish some sort of relationship between her and Bond.
They've never bothered that before.
They have like once or twice.
I mean, what was the deal? Okay, so going back to the first scene where they blow up the satellite station. What's the point of her parading around this building that's been on fire for 15
I think it's
minutes?
just to give her character.
You wanted to
She's
establish
empathy,
some
yeah.
notion that she's witnessed some horrific shit, right? But they never bring that up the rest of the movie. She's totally fine.
There was some weird foreshadowing when she was walking underneath the cross in the Russian church, because they had that same shape thing almost fall on her, and she like looks up at the Russian cross. Just cinematography wise, that's what I thought it was.
Yeah.
Maybe
Okay.
I'm crazy.
It was all to set up that scene.
Well, and then like she's just so trusting because like she contacts Boris, who just happens to live, and doesn't question where he went or how he got away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because that's a two-seat helicopter.
How did she know he was still alive?
Yeah, no, we don't know how he got out of anything.
I mean, whose lap was he sitting in on the ride out?
Well, yeah. That's true. It's a two-person helicopter. Yeah.
I can tell you what, it wasn't Denya because she would have killed him.
So he and Oromov were getting
Him and
cozy,
Ormov
yeah.
were cuddling.
Unless he was holding on the outside.
You know what? That makes no sense. How the hell did he get out of there?
I don't know.
Because like literally, we see him smoking a cigarette as the helicopter's landing.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what happens to him, but then he ends up in St. Petersburg, right?
Why didn't they just have him leg it? Like take a
Really?
truck or something?
It's the middle of the Siberia.
He
or
would
something,
have to
isn't
have
it?
gotten in the time between when they triggered the Goldeneye, when it actually happened, 30 miles away. Because just about every car has some electronic component, unless it was a.
I mean,
old
they're
car.
Soviet era cars.
Well,
Probably.
he actually because he didn't have to. He wasn't in the building at all.
No, but he would still have had to have gotten 30 miles away before it went off.
Well, the scene was 20 minutes long, man.
It's possible.
Well, they said the MiGs were scrambled because the alarm went off,
Yeah.
and the MiGs were scrambled. And Oromov says
He
their
said their
best
fastest
response
response
time
is
is 19 minutes.
So it could have been half an hour.
Could have been.
It could have been half an hour because he also left before they killed everyone. Okay, we figured that plot out. That made no sense, but we
Yeah.
figured it out.
Yeah,
Or he just like lapped it up with Oromov.
Yeah.
I guess that's the only thing that really makes sense.
So the whole rest of this movie is based around the idea that the Cold War has ended and the Soviets have fallen apart, right? Because we then cut to the fact that this is internal intrigue because, like, there's not like what was the KGB guy that we liked? The KGB general from the last 6 movies.
Pushkin.
Yeah. Okay, Pushkin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, because like we liked him because he was like Bond's opposite. And he was just like, "Oh, you got us this time, Mr. Bond," and like he would straighten things out because a lot of these were like rogue renegade guys. But like here, like there's this Dmitry Mishkin, who's the defense minister, and he doesn't even know about these things because much like the end of the Cold War, there's just weapons floating around.
Shit just goes missing.
Right?
And even throughout the movie, like especially the train scene, when we see the train leaving, we see like missiles just lying around in the train yard.
Yeah.
Just cause that's where they are.
Well, and Yanis is selling these weapons, and like he ended up with one of those like bomb-proof trains apparently that they were like
Just giving away.
There was a fire sale on those at the fall of Soviet Union. They were trying to get rid of those.
Well, it's like that Nick Cage movie Lord of War, but like everyone here's quipping. Like,
See, that's the weird part to me is how do you own a train? Because train tracks are scheduled and like owning a plane is one thing. You can set up flight schedules and you don't have to get in anyone's way. You can only have one train on the track at a certain area at a certain time.
Actually, a good question. I'm sure there are private trains.
I'm
But
sure.
you still have to schedule them. You can't
Yeah.
just be like, I am the king of the train now.
Not if
We're
you're
leaving,
on track.
That's true.
Yeah.
This is true.
Like what's his name? Hearst. The guy from the Hearst publisher. Like
Yes,
he doesn't know how,
yes.
Yeah.
But like,
Well, I'm sure he could bribe people. Like it's
I guess.
it's now a capitalist society. You can bribe anyone now.
well, and back then it was really like a mafia-tocracy. Like
Yeah.
it was, but that being said,
Is that a real word, by the way?
It is now.
it is.
Mi Casa Nostra, Sus Casa Nostra.
Yeah, no, you're- but like it just the thing about it is like we assume he has one of these rocket trains from the blah blah blah. Fine, maybe he does. But if there's a guy who's a rich millionaire guy who's sneaking around your country, renting track time out, you might be able to figure out, gee, we should watch this guy a little closer. But I mean, they go too far the other direction in the next movie. We're like, but what if he had a stealth boat? Like,
Which exists now, by the way.
No, it was a thing when that movie came out. Was a thing.
Hmm?
That boat was a real boat.
Oh.
It was a stealth boat. Like that
Really?
is- yes. If you go back to the Skunk Work projects, that was one of the Skunk Work project. That style boat.
Well, there's the recent Destroyer that came out that is
Yes,
really
but
cool.
no, I am
It doesn't work,
truly
though.
speaking.
It does.
Does it?
Yeah,
Yes,
it has
it
a
does.
radar
I thought,
signature
I
of
thought
like
that
a
was the
small
one that
fishing
didn't
boat.
work.
It did
No.
work.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, the
Cool.
Skunk Works project, one of them was a stealth boat. And that boat specifically.
neat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So now
well.
you know. I mean,
We will bring that back up in the next movie.
Yeah. This one, there's only a stealth helicopter and a stealth train. And a stealth satellite, I
It
guess.
wasn't a
The train
stealth
was-
train.
That train was not.
There was nothing
not
stealth
sneaking
about that.
past anywhere.
That train was.
You didn't see anyone stopping it, did
No.
you?
That train was meant to barrel through a wall like the Kool-Aid Man and not make any apologies along the way.
It does a pretty piss poor job of that by
Yeah.
barreling through a tank.
It almost made
It
it.
destroyed the tank, but went off rails anyway.
Yeah.
But that's the
The train was fine. It just kind of got derailed.
curse
do like-
you train.
I do like how the conductor essentially turned to ash, right? Because they hit one guy with a tank round. Like the
Yeah.
front of the train catches fire, and this guy in a hat just sticking.
Doesn't
his
do
head
anything.
outside,
Yeah.
and then he's gone. So I assume he got scraped off the side by a tank shell.
Maybe it was actually a passenger train, and we just didn't hear about the follow-up of hundreds dead. Train derails.
Oh, that's so funny.
He's renting out space.
We
in
don't
his,
know this.
arbitrage.
Though. Yeah. That's how he gets around. It's actually a commuter train. That's a horrible thought. I don't know why I came up with that.
That's so funny. Yes. So we haven't even gotten like anywhere
We
yet.
got, like Valentine, we should talk about at least. We mentioned him, but
Yeah, so Wade knows that whoever Janice is, Valentin
he's
is
a big competitor.
a competitor. So Bond knows Valentin because he gave him his limp, and we end up in this weird. Well, it's supposed to be like a mafia scene, like it's their bar, and his girlfriend is singing on stage, and she is the worst singer.
Stand by our man.
Mini
Might have been
Driver.
slightly better.
Yeah, no, that was. And he goes, "Who's strangling the cat? Strangling a cat."
That's my mistress. Yeah.
And
He had to actually get the colloquialism first. Like he was like strangling a cat, and then he looks at the.
yeah,
and then-
and it's
Yeah.
and it's Robbie Coltrane who's Hagrid. Like he comes back. He's actually a really fun character.
When did we get Valentine again? Which is the other movie?
World is
World's
not
Not
enough.
World's Not
Yeah.
Enough.
He's not in
Okay.
the next one. He's in the one after
I
that.
love all of his stuff in World's Not Enough. I mean, he's good in this one too.
Well, doesn't he get chewed up by a giant diamond cutter?
The tree cutters.
The tree cutters,
Yeah.
yes.
I also liked how he said like, and I have 6 helicopters, and Bond's like, and you have 3, and none of them fly.
Who's counting?
Who's counting?
I thought he was a great character. I think he's my favorite secondary character in the
Mhm.
movies. So.
He goes along with that. I think they did a really good job of showing just how Russia is falling apart
Yeah.
after the fall of the Cold War, fall of the Soviet Union. You've got gangsters, you've got crime, you've got mafia, you've got rogue trains, you've got tanks just lying around the place and running on the streets.
That are fully loaded.
Fully
Yeah.
loaded tanks.
Fine.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
well,
You've got corruption. Yeah.
well, and we got the next scene, which is also kind of a cool Soviet relic. After this, right, they end up saying, like, look, I'll hook this up if you pay me for it. And what he's going to do is he's going to meet you in this statue graveyard. And it's literally old communist statue propaganda, like giant Stalin statues and giant Workers' Party statues just scattered on the ground. And that's when we figure out that Janice is Trevelyan. But it's such a cool bit of scenery. Like,
As history nerds, we're just like, we want to go there. Please say that's a real place.
yeah, but I mean, it looks like the universal backlot of communism, right? Like,
Yeah, that's what it is.
No, yeah, it's just cool, and it's at this point that like the movie, I guess the third act kicks into gear, right? We finally have this.
But we got a little bit more of the second act. He gets captured.
Oh, that's right, because Bond gets hit in the jugular with a tranq dart.
Yes.
Wakes up in the stealth helicopter with Natalia as a way to kind of knock out all the loose ends simultaneously.
Could have just shot them both in the head and blown up the helicopter. But,
Right, but in typical Bond fashion, we're going to put them into a situation which they can probably get out of, but if they don't, it'll be fucking cool, right?
Well, I think the impression wasn't to be a long, drawn-out death scene. I think the point was to implicate them in the theft of the Tiger helicopter and the Severn Eye explosion.
Could have still shot them both in the head.
Could have still shot them both in the
But
head.
it would have been suspicious if you were in a helicopter with a bullet hole in your head.
Well, presumably the explosion would clean up some evidence.
Also,
It's a
Oromov
prototype helicopter. We don't know
Oromov
where
would have
the
been in
bullets are gonna
charge of
go.
that investigation. So.
That's a pretty big design flaw. That if the helicopter crashes and shoots the pilots.
Hey, the emergency rounds to the head.
That's the Russian version.
Intelligence.
Yeah, there you go.
That's the commissar version of this helicopter. You crash, you're dead.
And in case of an emergency, your cyanide
If you
capsule will
can't
be released
fly
from above you.
Helicopter kills you.
It's just, and it's also like, by the third movie, at one point Bond is underwater in a boat, so there's no top, so his just hair is underwater and he adjusts his tie. But here, he's literally headbanging the dashboards and accidentally sets off a missile, and then he's like headbanging the side.
And it's coming back! It's a heat-seeking missile that turns around and starts coming back. That's not how missiles work.
And then he's like, he wangs his head to the side, and actually they hit the ejection, and it's all dandy. It's fine.
Missiles
But
can actually do that. They can turn like that.
they did accidentally. I accidentally laughed about that. It shouldn't do that. The Navy gets embarrassed when they blow up their own submarines, but it happens apparently.
You have to make them run out of fuel. You can't really outturn them. You kind of can. I mean, I'm not an expert, but
It sounds like you're an expert.
I'm really not.
That's what
Someone's
chaps
gonna
and
go ahead
flares are
correct me.
for. But
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
But it's at this point that the military shows up, and we end up with them in like the bunker, right? They're in this room with Pushkin, and Natalia says it was actually Oromov. Oromov comes in having just woken up from a nap, and shoots everyone in the head with Bond's, or shoots Dmitry Mishkin in the head with Bond's PPK. So Bond would be implicated in the murder of the defense minister, and this is when everything goes to shit.
Yeah.
Bond and Natalia escape in run and gun through the Soviet building, I guess. Natalia
gets
Natalia gets captured.
/ library.
I guess.
I think it's supposed to be the
Archives, yeah.
I think it's supposed to be the defense ministry.
Why would they bring him to the archives?
I don't know. I think
guess,
it's the defense ministry
Yeah.
building.
Yeah,
Okay.
Which
just
yeah.
happens to have archives.
With a dungeon.
As you do. I mean, it's Soviet. I mean,
it's
come on,
Soviet,
yeah. It's probably imperial if we go back that far.
Well, the room that they dressed down Oromov in is definitely imperial. There's like the Romanovs are on the wall even. But then this is when Bond steals a tank and they're running away, and Oromov drinks the whole way.
Use the bumper. That's what it's for.
You see people flying off the hood of the car. It's great.
He's seeing his career rapidly just unravel.
Yeah,
Oromov.
because everyone is figuring this out,
Mm-hmm.
and like the only thing left is literally for Bond to murder him.
Yeah, he's got nothing left unless he wants to hang out with Alec and just run around in their bullet buddy train.
He's a man without a country at the end. I mean,
Yeah.
there's nowhere he can go.
Yeah.
Well, and because clearly he has nothing to do with Trevelyan. He's just their guy in the government who helps them get away with stuff. And once he's no longer in the government, he's
Useless.
Yeah.
a human shield.
Yeah.
And at the end, he's literally like, I can help, and he's holding Natalia like hostage. And they're like, you're not helping, guy. Like, you're the least important person in this scene. And they just shoot him dead. We end up on the rocket train after Bond destroys all of St. Petersburg. Like,
Yeah.
literally, he's driving through buildings.
Yes,
Because tanks are invulnerable.
they are.
They have that cheat.
Keep on
Yeah.
going.
And they go through walls, man. Like,
You go through anything.
they don't
Statues?
slow down.
And the
No.
cannon doesn't bend or anything like that.
No. And apparently a entire copper statue can fall on top of it and it won't dent at all.
Yeah.
Or slow down.
Or
Again,
slow down.
never slows down. Anakin outrace a jeep and a tank and a train.
Mm-hmm.
And all the police cars.
It's like the jaws of vehicles.
The cops are going after it, and I can understand, like, it can't outrun it. It shouldn't be able to outrun a police car. But at the same time, when the tank turns around and the cops are left sitting there going, yeah, maybe this wasn't the best thought out decision we've ever had.
This is World of Tanks Tokyo Drift.
Yeah.
It's just it's rounding corners. It's just like doing popping wheelies. It's going everywhere.
It's power sliding around corners, man. It's
Soviets apparently have amazing tank technology.
Tanks are pretty agile. They're really not that shitty.
With one person at the helm?
Yeah.
There's one driver in a tank.
Yeah.
One secret agent at the helm.
No, that's true.
That's true.
Yeah. I mean, they're maybe not that old. I don't know if you can power slides in a tank, but like
I do like
Not with
this,
treads
like
that.
when he's driving, because like he's sitting outside essentially, like driving it, but then he just goes underneath when he's going through buildings, so bricks don't hit him, and then he goes back on top. He just drives. And then he decides to throw himself in front of the train, the bullet train, as a way to get to the bottom of this. The train gets fired upon, and then it explodes apparently as they hit the tank, and it kind of slows
derails.
derails.
And so he's face to face. Everyone's together. It's Bond and Natalia and Alec and Xenia on the top, and then
Boris in the corner.
Boris in the corner, and Orumov holding Natalia hostage.
Uh-huh.
They're all in the same room, and Bond has to choose between killing Alec, his friend, and completing the mission, or saving Natalia, the girl, and doing what Bond does. And he chooses Natalia, Alec, and...
He chooses to do what Bond does.
Yeah, he tries to do both.
He tries to have
but
both.
Alex says, if you shoot Orumov, we're getting away.
Yeah.
And if you shoot us, Natalia's dead.
And now we have to figure out what the point of all this was, because obviously, at least we know by the end of the movie, you need Natalia because she's the only one who can program, deal with the computer stuff, using tech words like hackers. But
And Spike.
if you kill people, does that mean the mission, like, I don't know what happens, other than the fact that if we get to Cuba, which we get to Cuba, there is actually a whole bunch of people. So I don't know if there's like a number 2 somewhere who's like, oh, well, I guess we still go on with the plan. I don't know.
I don't know.
But the keys
I
would have
guess.
done. It doesn't matter. So bonds, and
Part of me thinks that maybe the Cuba base is another Soviet holdover kind of thing.
It would make
because they
sense.
even Yanis would, I would find it hard to put together something like that without anybody noticing.
Yeah, no, because especially with satellite, I mean,
And it's hooked up for Goldeneye.
yes, it had to be built by the Russians. That was, I think, just implied or easily inferred because there's no way.
And Orumov, of course, is they're in, but now he's dead, so there's no reason for them to listen to him. But Trevelyan is charismatic. He's Sean Bean. He can do what he wants.
Yeah. With the understanding that he dies in the end.
By falling to his death, and then the satellite frame crushes him.
Still not dead though. He falls and then lives.
60 feet.
Yeah.
Way more than
It was a lot more than 60 feet. It was a couple of stories.
Yeah.
Then the scaffolding falls and crushes him.
Mm-hmm.
And then he gets back up again and stars in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That is correct.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah.
And comes back for National Treasure.
He comes back for National.
And then back again for Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's unkillable. He's a T-1000.
I mean, he only died in 75% of what we mentioned, so.
Yeah, that's true.
Fine ratio, actually.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
So we now we're on our way to Cuba. This is when Jack Wade shows back up. We get a.
Were we ever introduced to the watch laser? Like, I know he uses it in the train.
He uses it at the very beginning.
Yes, he
Yeah.
uses it to get into the base. So when he
That's right.
bungees down, he uses
Right
it
in
to
the
cut
beginning.
in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Oh, no, it's not actually. He has like a gun.
Oh
in the
no,
first
he is
scene.
the gun had the laser in it.
Yeah.
Did it?
not
So
his
the watch,
Oh.
I think the watch is unique to the train scene.
So
actually.
even Q,
But
we're
he
not
had it in a
told.
previous movie.
I thought he's had it before.
Has he?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
it's
true.
it's not.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's just become at this point his watch is standard issue.
Right.
So
Well, and I mean it's useful. I don't know. It's something that doesn't need to be explained. None of these gadgets really need to be explained except for the pen, because the pen's the only one that does
It's a set
anything
piece
with.
for the scene. Like,
Right, and it's like you need to click it 3 times, then 3 more times to turn it off, but then 3 more times turns it back on, but then 3 more times turns it off. And so literally you're watching him click a pen.
and he's clicking that pen. Bond's keeping track of him clicking a pen. Because Bond doesn't really know how it works, because if it was just 3 times, he could have just tackled him at any time. But clearly Bond's afraid that he's accidentally disabled it by hitting it a 4th time.
Maybe?
I
No,
mean,
it's you click 3 more times and you disable it.
But yeah.
2 times? Yeah.
it doesn't matter. It's just a very weird scene.
Plot bunny.
But then chaos happens, right? Bond ends up on the base because he flies overhead and they get shot out of the sky, and then she's killed with a helicopter. I'm good.
Yeah. That was a good way for Xenia to die, though.
Yeah, they're fighting each other. She's strapped into a helicopter.
Is there a reason she was crucified cinematographically?
Picture-wise.
Quite crucified.
It was close.
I mean, she was...
It was like her.
She
up
was
against the
strung up.
Thing
Yeah.
on the tree.
It was a Y
cross.
tree more than a cross.
I mean, it wasn't a cross, but is there a reason?
So she
they
was
put her
crucified,
like
but
that?
not on a
I
cross.
thought it was more because she got pulled through. Never mind. I'm not going to go into the.
She was...
That's what I was thinking.
She
too.
was squeezed. Yeah. She was squeezed just like she squeezes other
Yeah, and there was even that crappy joke that she likes to squeeze, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And she always liked a good squeeze. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah.
Someone just thought it looked cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's them being artsy, I guess.
Yeah.
It doesn't really work.
No, it's very weird. And what's weird about it, too, is that it doesn't... It's very quick. It's actually kind of a nice fight with a heavy, right? Natalia, like, hits her with, like, a stick, and then Xenia picks her up by the face and throws her. And then Bond attaches a carabiner to the back of her and just shoots the pilot to death. And she gets crushed by a helicopter. It's quite gruesome for a movie that's bloodless.
Yes, but it has the highest Bond kill count to date, like at that time.
Yeah.
47 people.
What?
Yes.
By Bond himself.
By Bond himself,
47
47
people.
people.
I did not count for
It's all those Russians.
6.
Like, I mean, in
Those count.
the opening sequence, he's doing all those rail kills with the machine gun.
What about the people crushed by the barrels?
all the barrels.
In the beginning? Do those
Do
count?
are
They
all
did.
of
I don't know,
those
maybe.
Is everyone in that facility dead? Because that's way more than 40.
47 on
Yeah.
screen.
Yeah. But there were 2 parts about
What about the 600 people on the derailed train that just exploded?
Well, that's just news.
I would love that if it was just like a regular commuter train. That's how they get away with it. It's just a weird train at the front of like, just a regular kind of Amtrak train. And just like people die.
And it's Tuesday.
There's a rush hour in St. Petersburg is particularly bad today because some schmuck has blown up a train and driven a tank through half the town.
After driving a tank through the
Yeah.
town.
It'll be closed for another day.
They left the statue in the middle of a road and
Yeah. Apparently, it's just normal for Russia. Hijinks. But the satellite in Cuba. There are 2 things that annoyed me about that.
Let's hear them.
I mean, okay, first, Bond is flying over it. It's hidden by a lake. He's about ready to say, okay, can't find it. There's nothing here. Let's go to plan B.
yeah.
And out of nowhere comes a rocket from the lake and causes them to crash. If they had not fired that rocket, he would have left.
Yes, he would have.
That's the whole point of the lake on top of the
Well, but they
satellite.
don't know that. They may think he's onto them.
I mean, they could not do that and hope for the best.
They did hope for the best, which was
Yes,
that
but
he
then the other thing that
exploded.
they're not taking into consideration is by shooting him down. I mean, yeah, they were like, is that they know that somebody was looking for him. They're gonna go looking for that plane.
Mhm.
They're gonna find the wreckage and be like, hey, something around here killed him.
It'll be too late at that point, though. Like, their plan was in motion that day.
Depends on how,
Yeah.
Well, I do want to say it is the classic Bond villain issue, right? When you can just shoot Bond in the head, you don't. Or when you could just let him go, you draw attention to yourself,
Mhm.
right? Because
Yeah.
also, Famke Janssen driving her Ferrari, if she had just said, given up on Bond, just either let him pass her or just not kept racing.
Okay, at the casino, maybe not address him.
Yeah, and any of those things. Like, literally,
Yeah.
like, and then here, like you said, he could have just flown away. But then instead they're like, well, we can try killing him. And like, but of course you can't just kill Bond because he's bulletproof, which we learn. Because when he's running through the archives, they're literally shooting up at him, and then he stops and shoots down and kills everyone.
Yeah. I mean, that's how bullets work, right?
It sure is.
Yeah. Yeah. But then, as soon as they fire the rocket, you have Anna Top and her helicopter immediately there to, see if they went down, which is fair. You just shot at something, you want to double check.
Yeah.
He takes care of them, and then the satellite shows up, the dish is drained of water, and it shows up, and Bond and Natalia are infiltrating it. And it seems like it's a surprise for everyone inside the dish that Bond and Natalia are there, when they just fired a rocket, sent on a top, and a helicopter to go deal with that.
Yeah, and then like literally he takes out like a little pocket PC, kind of like, or a little. It looks like a little portable TV, and he's just like, "They're still alive. Kill them."
Mm-hmm.
Because it's that easy before, and then they don't. And ironically, they don't kill him.
And they're shooting at them from across the freaking football field of a satellite dish.
Mm-hmm.
They don't bother going around. They just shoot at them from across it. Come on, guys. Come on. I know.
Also, I assume that dish needs to maintain its parabolic, like its round, concave shape to send up the signal properly. Shooting at the dish might not be your best.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and after some very weird footage, which is run backwards, and I notice it more every time.
I know.
Oh yeah. The water's
and it's
wonky looking.
And the fact that the satellite dish is completely dry should have been a note. Yeah. But
It's just really hot.
Bond slides into the middle of it all the way down, ends up sneaking in somehow, kind of.
Rug burns so bad.
Oh, they slide down the world's biggest satellite dish, I think, and
you can see like her top is
riding up,
bare midriff, and that's got to be hurting.
Oh,
luckily Bond is.
It's like a big slip and slide, though.
I've had a few skateboard falls on the street, like where you're just sliding for longer than you want to. You do not walk away from that unscathed.
And Bond is dressed to colonize, in khakis.
Black khakis.
Is he Welsh? I forget.
He's Irish.
He's Irish.
Yes.
The accent's not bad.
Well, he moved to England when he was very young. So.
Well, right, but I've heard him do a more Irish accent. Like his Mrs. Doubtfire, he sounds more Irish.
Mm-hmm. True.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like the guy from On Her Majesty's Secret Service was Australian, and he was playing a Scot.
Yeah.
Scott, English.
Well, and Hugh Laurie plays Americans all the time because
That's true.
Rugged and addicted to Vicodin, right? That's how it works.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's how you embody the role. Just taking Vicodin.
Vicodin.
But yeah, no, I and then we end up with our final scene. This is when Natalia gets to a terminal and manages to change all the codes and causes the satellite to be re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. So rather than the second Goldeneye satellite being launched, we learn what Trevelyan's actual plot is.
Yes.
Bank
Finally.
heist. Yeah.
Bank heist.
Yeah.
He's going to hack into all the banks and then
the banks
of London, steal a bunch of money, and then zap it away. And my question was, why not just make up money then anyway?
Yes.
Why not just create a bank account with a whole bunch of the monies?
He's got someone like Boris there. He could do that.
Well, no, actually, because if you want to think about this, okay, so we're going to go and we're going to hack in the money. We're going to take it. We're going to put it somewhere else. Obviously, we're going to put it in another bank. The other bank will now have a record of this transaction. It doesn't matter if you removed all the transaction.
Yeah.
Well, and like, again, everyone thinks like there's this, it's such a movie device. There's like a magic Swiss bank account. But if all of a sudden you end up with hundreds of millions of dollars in one bank account,
Even the Swiss will go,
UBS is going to be, especially when the financial center of Northern Europe is vaporized.
Yeah.
Because
suddenly your neutrality goes out the door.
And, and EMPs apparently blow things up in this universe. So it's not like, so there's just going to be 30 miles of a crater, a flaming crater, which you can tell from space.
And that's assuming that actually the servers or whatever of these banks are based in London.
yeah, that they don't have offsite backups.
Exactly,
About that.
yeah.
Did they have offsite backups in the mid-90s?
I would imagine you would, just
Probably.
because that information, because at that time, computers weren't the most reliable, so there's probably...
Well, but they had physical records, yeah.
Yeah, they would also have physical records.
But those would get absolutely annihilated in the explosion, clearly.
Right. That's why you have to blow things up.
Explosions.
Those CRT monitors are full of TNT, absolutely to the brim.
And you have to bear in mind that it would take a long time to transfer this money over the, 14.8, 14.4 modem, and God help you if someone picks up the phone when that's transferring.
Sense of facts.
Because even she goes into the IBM product placement
I actually
store.
really like that IBM scene. That was
It's
good.
like, and it's very Apple store. It's just
I was
like
very impressed
one
by
thing on
the
a
way she
table.
handled that acumen. It was great.
Yeah,
Like,
it
she
was
just
good.
walks in and goes, 24 for the American schools, 12, and it was just like, and she was just on it. Like,
yeah.
it was,
I need a computer with 500 megabits of RAM and
then you're sitting
14.4
there going,
modem.
Like, that computer wouldn't do shit today.
My phone is more powerful than that. Yeah, come on.
Well, and then, in order to make the computers work in their Cuba base, there's things of liquid nitrogen too, because they have to like keep
Cooling,
things
yeah,
cold.
yeah.
Because like, I
Are
don't
they
know.
using like floppy disk drives and like reel-to-reel memory?
The only thing that got really accurate about that scene was the other computer programmers. They all looked like my friend's dad. Like, like they're all engineers with the short sleeve button downs, and they're just sitting behind the desk.
Very NASA. Yeah.
And that's what it was. Like, that's what it was. It was very like, it was a NASA show from whatever. That's just funny. Ultimately, again, Bond throws the pen as Boris is clicking it. Everything is filled with explosives. Like,
That was the
Including the
longest
explosives.
4-second fuse.
Pretty sure it was about
The
6
4-second
seconds.
fuse varied greatly throughout the movie.
Yes, it did. Didn't it?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because it was all over the place.
it also
yeah.
resets apparently every
I
time.
don't know
That
how
doesn't
they
make
did
any
it.
sense.
No. That's an awfully complicated pen.
It's got many, many fuses.
Yeah.
And then Boris, who can't figure out Natalia's, I almost called her Natasha. You did that. Can't figure out the codes. So he finally rushes up to her and goes, "Tell me the codes!" And Bond kicks him in the balls or whatever. And the pen goes flying underneath the computers, and all the servers explode except for one old Packard down at the bottom. And the old HP still manages to work a little bit.
God bless you, HP.
Yeah.
You're like a tank. It's the Nokia of computers.
We can get you any color of computer you want as long as that color is beige.
Also, is anyone else curious of the fact that, so this has a 30-mile radius. So it's, about 90 square miles, rough, a little bit more, but just give it a rough. Cuba is a fair-sized island. You just, probably still, I mean, not that it's a major financial center, but you kind of just dicked over Cuba for any computers that they have.
Well, they didn't shoot the Goldeneye.
They
no,
burn it up in
not
the atmosphere.
Oh, that's right. It did burn up in the atmosphere.
No,
So
it explodes in the
It
atmosphere.
explodes in the
Yeah.
atmosphere. That's right. Okay, this the whole base.
Yeah, that'd be
goes
kind of
boom.
messed up if Bond is just like, well, fuck you, Cuba.
That would have been funny.
They're communist anyway. They don't
Queen and
count.
country, queen
Yeah.
and country.
Yeah. It's a 2 for this mission.
Set him back a few years.
He's
Spoil the
promoted.
plan.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, and so
He kicks Alec off the telescopic or
He
the
grabs
satellite
his
dish.
boot first. That was the part. He wanted his final line. Like, he didn't have to do
Yeah.
anything. Alec was going down, and he holds onto his boot, which I don't care. One-handed. I don't care how strong you are. Alec, if he wears 180 top, it's just saying that's his, it's like, and you're holding on one-handed. That's 180 pounds hanging off your grip strength. No.
Mm-hmm.
well, and then here we get the line, is that we've gotten 4 times before, right? For Queen and Country, he goes no for me.
England, Alec?
And
Yeah.
for England, Alec, and he goes no for me, and he lets him go, and he falls and splats. And then
But it doesn't really splat.
no, and then everything else falls on him, and Bond
Yeah.
gets away somehow. And after the helicopter comes and picks him up,
He
and
hops on the helicopter.
He hangs on.
Yeah.
He hangs on, and we get the helicopter because Natalia has put a gun to the head of the helicopter pilot, who then automatically does everything she wants, then flies away out of movie town, and we never get an explanation as to
To
why.
be fair, I'm sure that helicopter pilot was like, get me out of here. I am done with this.
I would have
Shit's
loved
blowing
it.
up. Water is catching fire.
So at the end, we get this parallel scenes to the destruction of Serenaya, right? Where the satellite station is crashing down around Boris this time, and he survives, and he goes, "I am invincible!" And then all the liquid nitrogen tanks explode, and he freezes.
Yeah, the explosives that Bond set that somehow didn't go off in all the previous explosions
Yeah.
finally detonate.
And
Yes,
freeze Trevelyan, or freeze Boris. And we're gonna get a Bond scene finally where he's making out and gonna have sex with the Bond girl, but it turns out the Marines are perving, and they're just there.
Which is very reminiscent of plenty of other Bond movies, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where it ends with him and the girl together, and they're like, "There's no one around." And
Yeah.
you've got CIA, Marines, Army guys all over the place.
It'd have been great if when the Marines are revealed and like 3 helicopters come out of nowhere, you see a missile get launched and they just blow up their helicopter and Doug Bond and Natalia like, enemy! And just they get taken off into the distance. Then we get the weirdest non-Bond song.
Oh, that was a
Yeah.
bad ending.
That was so
song.
strange.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be, you looked this up, what was it?
John.
Yeah, it was the guy who did the music, John Serra.
Mhm.
He also did the music for Leon the Professional.
Oh, okay. That's
And
right.
this song was left over from Leon the Professional.
I wonder why they didn't use it.
I don't know. Somehow they decided it made better fit for a James Bond movie.
For the garbage?
Do we get the Bond theme
Once in the
tank scene we hear it.
In the archives when he's jumping through the window,
good.
because apparently that was by a different composer.
Yes.
That's why we have the Bond theme.
Okay, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's otherwise the music in this is very weird because it's very subtle throughout, right? We don't even get the reintroduction of Goldeneye, the theme, too often.
Actually, people were kind of upset because when you had the opening barrel shot and all of that, the music was changed subtly. People didn't like it, so in the
It was very techno.
in the addition the future movies in the Brosnan franchise, they went back to the previous style because people did not appreciate it at all. So.
No, it was weird.
I mean, we've talked about this movie a lot because, well, we bring it up in other episodes a lot.
This is the Goldeneye standard. Hey, hey, hey. I'm still here.
Yeah, Goldeneye. Okay, well, it's the name of where he used to write in Jamaica.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I had to mention that because it's trivia.
But it was the first movie to not be based off a Bond novel, that they have no part of any Bond novel. It was fully independent from any of his.
And that becomes a problem with the Pierce movies later. Again, this is one of those movies that's kind of weird.
You mean the other Pierce movies didn't come from books somehow? There weren't diamond-faced men and space lasers in his books?
Not touching.
North Koreans were the bad guys for some reason. Yeah, North Koreans were not the bad guys.
Well, that may be part of the reason why the movies are very reminiscent of, like, the Pierce Brosnan movies are very reminiscent of other action movies from that period, because they were entirely original. So they really were just like any other action movie, just with James Bond instead of John McClane.
John McClane.
Other John
That's a movie I want to watch.
Great action hero.
Or, Schwarzenegger or whatever. And apparently, I know Thomas was looking at what I was, that the plot to this was so similar to True Lies, which was being filmed at the same time, that they had to change the plot of this so that it didn't quite match up. And I don't remember the plot of True Lies that well, but I don't remember Soviet missiles going anywhere in that. So, I
mean, like, the only thing
it's
I can
cookie
think
cutter
of,
in many ways.
it's kind of closer to Moonraker the book, kind of, because like they don't go into space in Moonraker the book. But yeah, no, it's kind of weird. I mean, and every movie that comes after this, was written by Purvis and Wade. And this doesn't feel like, because they didn't write this, right? And so, like, every Pierce Brosnan movie after this feels like it kind of wants to do bits of this, but bigger. And we don't really ever get a feeling for Pierce Brosnan. He has the least interesting lines. He has the least lines, almost, of any other major character.
As we said earlier, Moneypenny owned him.
Yeah.
In that exchange.
Owned him in her exchange.
Oh, yeah.
And frankly, Natalia is a more important character for most of the movie. He just never misses a shot. He doesn't waste a bullet.
You know, what's interesting is that, there were a number of different actors who were thought to be for Bond for this film, including the new M at the time.
Ray Fiennes?
Yes.
Ray Fiennes is good. I like it.
It would have been
He
interesting.
would have been a great
Wasn't it an American also for it? We talked about
Mel
this
Gibson.
Mel Gibson's
Mel
an
Gibson's
Australian.
Australian.
Oh,
There
maybe
was someone
not.
else. Who else was there?
Hugh Grant, Paul
James
McGann.
Franco. No.
No. Paul McGann.
There was someone else. I don't remember who.
Liam Neeson was also up for it.
He's Irish.
He's Irish.
Yeah. No, I don't think there was an American up for this.
Well, I mean, there was, but it was another movie. I was wrong. It was the guy who ended up being Reagan's assistant, Gavin. John Gavin. But anyway, I think we've talked about the movie. We went pretty quick on this one.
We did.
I mean, we'll all give our final thoughts, but I think we agree that it's actually a much more interesting movie watching all the other Bonds to me, because it feels different. Like, it's paced different. Bond is James Bond, but the world is much more difficult, much more chaotic, and he doesn't fit. And that's M's line, right? You are a misogynistic dinosaur in a world that doesn't fit, and I was seeing if you could even survive in this post-Cold War world.
An analog man in a digital world.
Yep. Even though she is significantly older than he is, so that's funny.
Yes, that is true.
And she's all very numbers, which is something they drop hard in the next movies.
Yeah.
Because this one, half the plot is, we didn't follow the helicopter because your analyst said it wasn't worth it. We didn't think Goldeneye existed because your analyst said they didn't have the money for it. And hey, you're all wrong.
Yeah. I don't know. It's an interesting kind of vehicle here.
And the new cast does a good job. I like Samantha Bond as Moneypenny, but she doesn't last very long either.
Is she even in another one?
Yeah, no, she's in the next one, and I think she's also in. Yeah, no, she makes it to.
Daniel Craig.
No, she doesn't. No, she
So
does not go into the new Bonds.
through
she
the
just
Brosnan.
makes it through the Brosnan era,
Mm-hmm.
and so she hits the 4 movies, and that's it.
Well, Thomas, what are your final thoughts?
Are we doing final movie thoughts or Pierce thoughts?
Oh, we should talk a little bit about Pierce. He has a huge head.
Very big head.
Yeah.
Okay, we've talked a little bit.
Hockey
Okay,
fan.
I think we're
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I mean, they do a good job introducing him. He gets to say shaken, not stirred. It doesn't make sense. He gets to say Bond, James Bond, 007. They refer to each other as 007, 006, Trevelyan and Alec, and Bond and
They
James.
do a good job showing that he's effective. Like, I mean, he's
Yeah.
a good fighter.
Yeah.
Like, he does a good job. Like, so they do a lot of things. Not, there's no ham-fisted like, no, this is Bond. It's like, no, he is Bond. Like, he just
They show, don't tell.
they do it really well. I think he's a good Bond.
He wears a good suit.
He looks.
He does. He really
ultimately,
does,
dapper,
yeah.
right?
ultimately, he'll do better as Bond than the scripts let him be. Because
Yeah.
I don't think the scripts do him any favors.
No.
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 Scout.
Pause.
So, final thoughts on the movies then.
I enjoyed it. This was the first Bond movie I ever saw as a kid. Going back, I still enjoy it. It definitely has its faults coming back and going, yeah, this is not as good as some of the other Bond movies, but I really enjoy it. And the video game was awesome because we managed to go the entire podcast without mentioning it, but it was really good.
Strangely enough, the tank is less powerful in the video game than in the movie because you can't drive through the random buildings.
That tank
And
would
you
drive
can't
straight out
power
of
slide
television.
in the
No.
tank in the games.
No.
That would have been a fun feature.
Steve?
Yeah, I like this one. It feels very iconic for me, but it doesn't feel like, it's a very cliche Bond film, at least in my opinion. But it doesn't feel like they're trying too hard for it to be that. So I appreciate that. The cast is great. Pierce Brosnan is the most handsome Bond in my opinion. The plot holds together. There's enough action to keep it going, but it doesn't feel like it drags on for too long. So yeah, I like this one. It's paced well. I think that the story tells itself pretty well, and the cast is pretty good.
Excellent. John?
Yeah, I'd have to agree that the pacing is pretty good, although in the beginning hour, I thought it dragged a little bit with Natalia's character development. But overall, I mean, some of the special effects have shown their age, like the reverse water in the thing, and some of the models are blatantly models. But I believe Pierce Brosnan is Bond, and it's a decent threat, decent plot. It holds together pretty well paced. So I like it. Yeah.
Real quick, I think I will say, like, you can tell the models more, and I think that might come as an aspect. We've discussed this before, that coming to the Blu-ray and really hiking up the resolution
That's true.
kind of shows some of the stuff that we never would have seen, a few stages back. So.
Yeah.
Well, and just to your point, the one place where I noticed it being a model the most was when they showed the Goldeneye satellite splitting apart, and then inside was a giant laser, and it reminded me so much of an Austin Powers kind of like where it was clearly a fake thing, and that was bad. That didn't look great.
Yeah.
Although it still looked better than some of the CGI stuff that they do with later ones.
Yes.
So. And of course, Austin Powers comes out for the Pierce Brosnan ones, so they eventually start referencing each other. And when Purvis and Wade are kind of fired at one point and replaced, they just turn one of their scripts into Johnny English. So
I didn't know that. Oh,
yeah,
wow.
same guys,
Just with Mr. Bean.
just with Mr. Bean, who was in a Bond movie.
Yeah.
What
Full
do you
circle.
got, Matt?
I always like this one. It's probably the one I've seen the most. And I guess because I've seen it the most, I know what's coming all the time. Like, nothing surprised me. It was exactly what I was expecting, which is kind of unique for what the rest of the watch-throughs, because a lot of them I hadn't seen very often.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I wouldn't say I was disappointed by it, but I've enjoyed watching all the other ones a lot because I hadn't seen them recently. This one I knew exactly what was coming, but aside from all that, it's a great movie. The pacing is really good. The plot, I would say, makes sense, and it moves, and it's not.
I'm very
really
happy for that.
convoluted.
Yeah.
I know John is. That's the plot summary man.
Well, I just was glad that there were stakes that felt like sort of stakes.
Up until the bank heist, I always think the bank heist thing is weird.
It's weird because, again, like Bond says, so at the end of the day, you're just a common criminal.
Yeah.
Like, even Bond is baffled by it, which is kind of funny.
But up until that, like, the villain's plan makes sense.
Yeah.
Everything makes sense, more or less. It's a... You don't...
And it's a threat.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like, oh, we'll end the world. We've got this thing that can only... this one satellite that can only do this one thing in this one place.
Once.
Where are we going to do it?
Yeah. Well, and it's one of the times when Bond is most equally matched by his opponent, which I like.
Mm-hmm.
And the dynamic between him and Trevelyan is really good, and the setup in the beginning is really good, and the reveal that he is Giannis is really good. They do a lot of things well.
And I mean, there's a reason why they have since gone back to that well a couple times, because like it works. I do like that idea. Okay, so this is something I never reference, but I will this time. We're not the only Bond podcast out there.
Lies.
I know. James Bonding did them all. But they did Tomorrow Never Dies. And so I'm going to be interested to do Tomorrow Never Dies because watching them, I remember we talked about this a lot. We all watched Goldeneye a billion times. And so when Tomorrow Never Dies came out, it was kind of a disappointment, not necessarily because it was a bad movie. It's just that we loved Goldeneye and it wasn't Goldeneye. Fine. Tomorrow Never Dies is what Matt Myra says is one of the best Bond movies ever made. I don't think it was.
Someone likes that one.
We watched it semi-recently.
We did.
I thought it was a flaming train wreck.
No, it wasn't terrible.
But that's what I'm thinking. Like, this one might be incidentally one of the most dividing ones because I thought it was boring. And then you thought it was terrible, and other people thought it was indifferent but meh. So I'm going to be interested using this specific lens how it comes out. So tune in next time when Bond returns, when Pierce Brosnan returns as Bond in Tomorrow Never Dies. Thanks, guys. Myopia Movies is produced by Nick Hoffman and Daniel Settis. It is hosted by Nick Hoffman and Daniel Settis. Mission Briefing is hosted by John Copsey. Podcasts are edited by Daniel Settis, and Patreon is edited by Nick Hoffman. Our engineer is Nick Hoffman. The theme song is Surf Shimmy by Kevin MacLeod from Incomptech.com. Licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license.